Christmas dinner at the lake house always had a fake feel to it, but that year it felt straight up scripted. Every wine glass was set like a catalog photo. Every laugh was 2 seconds too late, like they were waiting for a cue. Even the damn candles looked like they were lit for effect, not warmth. And I knew why. My name's David Reeve. I'm 38 years old. I live in Marietta, Georgia, but this lake house in North Carolina has been my home, my responsibility for over a decade. That night I sat at the far end of the long cherry wood table, next to the busted radiator I fixed last fall. It still clicked every 10 minutes. Lorna, who'd worked on this property longer than any of us had lived in it, moved quietly around the dining room, topping off glasses and pretending not to hear. My brother Marcus was at the head, wine glass raised, smug as ever. Laura, our sister, sat beside him, wearing that tense little smile she pulls when she's waiting for someone else to take the fall. Marcus tapped his fork on his glass. Let's raise a toast to the next chapter of our family legacy. He looked straight at me. After a lot of discussion, we've decided to sell the lake house. Nobody blinked. He went on smooth and casual, like he wasn't detonating a bomb. It's time to let go. David, we all think it's best you start the next phase of your life somewhere else. You've held on long enough. I didn't flinch. I didn't yell or slam the table like they were expecting. I just reached for my water, sipped, and set it down. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. Marcus smiled, like he'd just served me a warm plate of truth. We've lined up a buyer. They're ready to move quick. This place will be a boutique resort by next summer. You'll land on your feet, I'm sure. Laura nodded like she actually believed that. Our mother, silent as always, just folded her napkin slowly. My father sat near the end of the table, silent, his glass untouched, eyes fixed somewhere past the candles. I glanced around the room. Same walls I painted after the last hurricane. Same floor I restained 2 summers ago. Same pipes I crawled under the house to fix in the dead of winter. But none of that mattered to them. To them, I was a stray dog that hung around too long after Dad stopped caring. They thought I was freeloading. They thought I was dumb enough to fix their messes for free while they handled the grown-up decisions. They thought I had no backup plan. They were wrong. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Sounds like a big move. Hope you read the fine print. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Meaning? I folded my hands. Just that I hope whoever signed off on that sale knew who the legal owner was. He stared at me for a second. The candles flickered. Laura's fork stopped midair. 3 years ago, back when I still wore the company badge and parked in the Reeve Capital reserved lot, I noticed something off in the pension reports. A few names missing, numbers not lining up. I brought it to Marcus, thinking maybe it was just an error in the system. He smiled and clapped me on the shoulder like I was 5. Don't stress the accounting, we got people for that. That was my first red flag. The second came a week later, when my login stopped working. HR told me my role was being restructured. No warning, no thank you. Just an email and a security escort. Laura wouldn't take my calls. Dad wouldn't look me in the eye. A month later, I found out Marcus had gotten him to change his will. Right in the middle of what the doctors called a cognitive fog episode. He was in and out of the hospital, confused half the time, and Marcus used that to lock me out completely. When the new paperwork came through, my name was gone. Just gone. Like I'd never been part of the family plan at all. They told the board I'd been erratic, that I'd misused project budgets and had emotional breakdowns at client meetings. All lies. And the worst part? People believed them. Because Marcus was smooth and Laura knew how to smile through a knife wound. I moved out of the city a few weeks later, burned out and broke. I picked up side work under a fake name, contracts, consulting gigs, anything to keep my bills paid and my head down. But I wasn't licking wounds. I was building a case. Every fake invoice, every offshore payment, every quiet little deal they thought no one saw. I tracked it all. And then one day, during a routine record search, just to keep myself sane, I caught something. Marcus had refinanced the estate trust, not for the company, for himself. He dumped a 7-figure stock portfolio to cover margin losses and used the property trust as collateral to stop the bleeding. It was quiet, buried in layers of shell companies and proxies. But it was there. And worse, the trust had already defaulted once. That was my breaking point. I stopped hoping for reconciliation. I started buying up pieces of their mess, quietly, surgically. I set up a holding company in Delaware. I used a friend's firm to handle the paperwork. I kept the Reeve name out of everything. They thought I was off the grid, living in the woods fixing plumbing. In reality, I was documenting every single illegal move they made, while slowly, legally reclaiming what they stole from me. I learned how to file property claims, how to track asset transfers. I even hired a former IRS auditor for 6 months just to teach me the red flags. It wasn't revenge, it was survival. They built their empire on confidence and manipulation. I rebuilt my life on receipts. And sitting there, watching them squirm at that table, I didn't feel proud or angry. I just felt focused, like the last puzzle piece was about to click into place. Laura finally cleared her throat. "David, what is this?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Not until they saw the whole picture, because this wasn't just about the house. This was about everything they thought I couldn't prove. I let the silence stretch another second before I sat back down. Laura's voice wobbled. "David, what are you talking about?" Marcus finally reached for the envelope, flipping it open with the same fake calm he used to fire people. He barely skimmed the first page before closing it. "This is nonsense. You can't just claim ownership of the house." I raised an eyebrow. "You sure? That's the deed transfer from the foreclosure sale, recorded in Burke County 6 months ago." He scoffed. "No court would uphold that. This estate belongs to the family trust." "That trust was liquidated after a margin call," I said casually, like we were talking weather. "You know, when you used it to prop up your firm last year?" Marcus blinked. Twice. I leaned forward. "Or did you forget the terms of that refinance agreement? Because the moment your firm defaulted, the trust became collateral." My mother gasped. Her napkin dropped to the floor. Marcus gave a short, breathy laugh, shaking his head like I'd told a joke that went too far. "You're bluffing." Laura looked frozen, eyes locked on the envelope like it might swallow her. "Ask the county clerk," I said, "or the shell company that bought the house. Ever heard of Black Birch Holdings, LLC? Laura finally whispered. "That's you?" I nodded. "Set it up last year. Used it to acquire the property after the bank listed it. You all got the foreclosure notice. You just didn't open your mail." Marcus's mouth twitched. "This is insane." I slid another set of papers across the table. Title history, transfer of ownership, wire confirmations. Every page was stamped, signed, and dated. You didn't even notice the address change on the property tax records. You were too busy lining up your fake buyer. He stood suddenly, pacing behind his chair. "I had a deal lined up with a luxury developer. They already made an offer." I cut him off. "You were trying to sell something you didn't own. That's called fraud." My mom looked from him to me. "Why would you do this, David?" "I didn't do anything to you," I said, my voice tight. "I followed the paper trail you all left behind." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "You blindsided us." "You cut me out," I snapped. "You thought I'd crawl away and rot. But while you were busy pretending to be the king of this family, I was out there picking up the pieces." Laura looked pale, her wineglass tilted slightly in her hand. "So what now?" I looked at her straight. "Now, we talk about who really built this family and who tried to bury it." My mother sat completely still. Her hands were clenched tight in her lap. She didn't say a word. I reached back into my bag and pulled out one final document, bank statements from the trust account, leading right into Marcus's personal holdings. I didn't show it yet, not yet, because this wasn't the finale. This was just the pressure valve finally breaking open. Marcus stared at the envelope like it had teeth. "You planned this." "You're right, I did," I said. Marcus's face had gone red, his laugh gone hollow. Laura looked like she wanted to sink into her chair and disappear. I leaned forward, palms flat on the table, and let the next piece drop. "Here's the timeline," I said, voice steady. "Your firm tanked, Marcus. You lost big on those energy stocks. You used the family trust as collateral to cover your margin call. The bank seized control when you defaulted, and while you were scrambling for investors, the house went up for sale. Quietly, legally. I was the only one who showed up to bid." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You're twisting this." I reached into my folder again and tossed out a stack of emails. "These are yours, Laura. Internal memos, doctored reports, all with your signature. You filed false compliance paperwork to block me from getting access to the company records. You told the board I was mentally unfit." Laura's face drained of color. "That's not true." I cut her off. It's true enough that I've got 3 different copies, and they don't match. You edited them to erase my access. Her hands shook as she pushed the papers away, like just touching them would burn her. Then I dropped the real bomb. A thick stack of wire transfer logs bound with a clip. And here's where the trust money really went, straight into accounts in the Caymans. Marcus, you siphoned off more than $2 million under consulting fees. You used our father's legacy like your personal ATM. Marcus barked out a laugh, too sharp to sound natural. Those are fabricated. No one will believe this. I stared him down. They don't have to believe it. It's documented. Every single transfer has a routing number, timestamp, and approval code, all under your login. The room went dead quiet. My mother sat frozen, her lips pressed together so hard they'd gone white. Finally, I turned my eyes to my father. He'd been sitting stiff in his chair, his glass untouched, his expression carved out of stone. I locked eyes with him. You knew, I said. My voice was low even. You knew everything. You just thought I couldn't prove it. For a moment, nothing. Then his jaw twitched. He opened his mouth, but no words came. I leaned closer. You let Marcus run wild with the trust. You let Laura falsify records. And when I raised questions, you backed their story instead of mine. You sold me out in favor of your perfect heirs. My mother finally stirred, her voice barely above a whisper. Is this all true? No one answered. Marcus looked down at the floor. Laura wiped at her eyes but didn't speak. I spread the documents across the table like playing cards. This isn't revenge. This isn't payback for you cutting me out. This is restitution. Every page is notarized. Every filing is public record. You can scream. You can deny. You can call me a liar. But the paper doesn't care. The law doesn't care. I gathered the last document, the deed transfer, and held it up between my fingers. Marcus slammed his fist on the table, but the sound rang hollow. Laura didn't even look up. My father turned his head away, staring at the dark window like the answer might be hiding outside. My mother's hands trembled as she reached for one of the papers, scanning it with wide eyes. Her voice cracked. My God. I sat back in my chair, calm and unshaken. You wanted to bury me. Instead, you buried yourselves. All I did was dig up the dirt you left behind. The papers on the table lay scattered like broken glass. Marcus leaned on the back of his chair, chest heaving. Laura kept her eyes fixed on her lap. My father hadn't moved in minutes. I wasn't done, not even close. There's one more piece, I said. My voice cut through the room. Aunt Ruth! Laura's head snapped up. I pulled another folder from my bag, thick, heavier than the rest. I laid it on the table and slid it slowly toward her. Ruth's signed copy of her will never left her possession until the night she died. The one you filed, conveniently leaving everything to Marcus, wasn't hers. Laura shook her head quickly. That's not true. Really? I said, flipping the folder open. Because here's security footage from the hospice wing. You, Laura, slipping into her room at 2 a.m, no doctor, no nurse, just you. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I pulled out another document, stapled testimony. This is from a nurse on the night shift. She says Ruth's medication dosage was off the chart when she checked the logs the next morning. Not a normal spike, not accidental. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. And here, I continued, pulling one last sheet, is the toxicology report from Ruth's chart. Elevated levels of morphine, 3 times the prescribed dose. The attending physician flagged it, but somehow that note didn't make it into the official file you submitted. Laura's hands trembled. You're twisting this. She was dying. She was in pain. She was lucid, I snapped. She was emailing me 3 days before she passed, and she sent me something you didn't expect. I reached into my jacket pocket and set a small USB drive in the middle of the table. The sound of it hitting the wood echoed like a hammer. Ruth sent me the draft of her will, the real one. It names me as her successor co-owner. She never changed it, no matter what you filed. She even attached a video message, her voice, her words, saying she wanted me to keep the estate safe from all of you. Laura's face went white. Marcus looked at her, his eyes blazing. What the hell did you do? She stammered. I didn't. I leaned forward, my voice sharp as steel. Save it. This isn't a family squabble anymore. This is probate court material. And if the DA decides the nurse's testimony plus the toxicology is enough for an investigation, I tapped the USB with my finger. That's a police matter. My father finally spoke, his voice gravel. "You'd really drag your own sister into court," I glared at him. "She dragged herself there. She forged a will, tampered with records, and slipped into a hospice room the night our aunt died. You think I'm the one destroying this family? No. I'm the one cleaning up the rot you let grow." My mother's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. She just stared at Laura like she was seeing her for the first time. Marcus looked cornered, his composure cracking. He hissed, "You'll regret this. You don't know the damage you're doing." I stood, slid the USB back into my pocket, and gathered the testimony sheets. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm making sure Ruth's voice is heard, not buried. And if that means dragging all of this into the light, so be it." I planted both hands on the table and looked each of them in the eye, one by one. This house is mine. The will is mine. And every scrap of evidence I've shown tonight is admissible. Ruth trusted me to protect what she built, and I'll honor that, even if it means watching the rest of you fall. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Nobody moved. The house was dead quiet, except for the faint hum of the fridge and Laura's shaky breathing. I stood there, still holding the folder, watching their world cave in. Then came the knock. 3 short raps, no rush, no hesitation. I turned to the front door. Through the frosted glass, I saw 2 Burke County deputies flanking a man in a dark jacket with a federal badge clipped to his chest. I opened the door without a word. "David Reeve?" the lead agent asked. I nodded. "They're inside. Everything's ready." He stepped in, followed by the officers. "We have arrest warrants for Marcus Reeve and Laura Reeve on charges of fraud, embezzlement, obstruction of justice, and falsification of legal documents." Marcus backed away from the table, panic blooming across his face. "This is insane. You can't arrest us in our own damn house." "It's not your house," I said, stepping aside as they cuffed him. "Not anymore." Laura didn't say a word. She just started crying, soft broken sobs, as they read her rights and secured her wrists behind her back. My father stood up, face red, fingers shaking at me. "You self-righteous little bastard. Look what you've done. You ruined this family." I met his glare without flinching. "No, you did that. I'm just turning on the lights." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. There was nothing left to say. The agents led Marcus and Laura past the Christmas tree, still lit, still blinking like it hadn't noticed the collapse happening around it. My mother stood frozen, one hand gripping the back of her chair, her eyes locked on Laura like she didn't recognize her anymore. She didn't speak, not one word. The front door closed behind them. The room deflated, like someone had sucked the oxygen out. My father slumped back into his chair, staring straight ahead. I turned toward the kitchen, where Lorna had been standing quietly just out of view. She stepped forward now, her face calm, but her eyes sharp. "You all right?" she asked. I nodded. "Been waiting a long time for this." She walked over, placed a hand on my shoulder. "Your aunt would be proud." That was the only thing anyone said for a while. Lorna had worked on this property for over 30 years. She'd seen the rise and the rot of this family up close, and she never once treated me like I didn't belong. When everyone else looked past me, she saw me. She was still here. That said more than anything. I looked out the window as the squad cars pulled away, their tires crunching over old gravel and fresh snow. This place had held so many lies for so long. Now, it held something else, something earned. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clear, grounded, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't alone in this house. 3 months later, the house didn't smell like old money anymore. It smelled like sawdust, motor oil, solder, and fresh coffee. It smelled like progress. The estate was now the Reeve Center, a non-profit trades and tech training hub for underprivileged young men. We opened quietly, no ribbon cutting, no press. Just a new lock on the front gate and a purpose that didn't involve trust funds or manipulation. The old garage, now a mechanic shop. We had 6 kids enrolled in the first rotation, tearing apart a beat-up Civic on day 1. The music room, the one Marcus used to show off his expensive speakers, had been gutted and rebuilt into a carpentry lab. Real tools, real benches, real sawdust. And the dining room, where Laura once raised crystal glasses and lied to my face, was now a shared design space. 3D printers, drafting tables, laptops humming with energy. I lived upstairs in a modest studio we built above the north wing. Just enough space for a bed, a desk, and some peace. I didn't need anything more. Lorna handled the daily grind. She was now the official director of operations. Watching her run morning check-ins and class rotations with the same sharpness she once used to manage the estate staff, that was the best decision I ever made. She kept this place from turning into chaos. She knew how to run things without stepping on people. One morning, I stepped into the hallway just in time to see Cousin Kevin running cable through the ceiling tiles with one of our volunteer electricians. He looked up, grinned, and wiped his hands on his jeans. "Hey Dave, we're almost done rewiring the West Wing. Should be good for the computer lab next week." I smiled back. "Nice work. You good on supplies?" "Yep. Lorna's got us stocked. And I'm starting HVAC next month." Kevin used to be Marcus's errand boy, always chasing petty jobs, always broke, always looking for someone to tell him what to do. Now he was working on his trade school certification with a full scholarship from the center. He earned it. Nobody gave him anything. That was the rule here. You show up, you try, and you own what you build. I made a slow loop through the common areas. Voices echoed through the hall, tools clinked on metal, keyboards tapped in steady rhythm. The walls that once held secrets were now lined with whiteboards covered in blueprints, project plans, and job postings. These kids weren't from wealth. Most of them barely finished high school. Some hadn't. But they showed up every morning, ready to learn something real. Nobody here was playing games. I paused at the bottom of the stairs, watching a group huddle around a welding diagram, arguing about which torch setting would give a cleaner joint. This wasn't some shiny charity stunt. It was practical, honest. I built this place with one goal: give the next generation what my family never gave me, a shot at something solid, something earned. Lorna passed by with a clipboard and gave me a nod. "Lunch in 20. You should eat today." "I will," I said, grinning. I took one more lap through the halls. The house was different now, louder, rougher, alive. For the first time in years, every corner buzzed with purpose. After the last welding class wrapped up and the lights were dimmed for the night, I headed back upstairs, past the second-floor landing, where the old family portraits used to hang. I'd replaced them with student photos and group shots from job sites. Smiling faces, calloused hands, safety vests, name tags. My mother lived in a small condo up in Concord, New Hampshire, second floor, clean and quiet, near a park she liked. She never asked where the rent money came from, and I never told her. I wired it through a management firm, same as the groceries that showed up every Monday like clockwork. We talked sometimes, birthdays, holidays, a random phone call every couple weeks. But never about the others. Not Marcus, not Laura, not Dad. That part of the story was done. She didn't ask for details, and I didn't offer them. Whatever comfort she had now, I made sure it stayed steady, quiet, dignified, no strings. She'd made her choices. I made mine. Back in my office, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. It was full, jammed actually, with letters. Most were handwritten on notebook paper, some typed on public library computers, folded and taped like the writers were scared they might fall apart in the mail. "Mr. Reeve, I passed my GED yesterday. My mom cried when I showed her. Just wanted to say thank you for helping me get my first welding cert. Got a job starting Monday. Pays real money." Before this place, I didn't know anyone gave a damn if I showed up or not. Every single one went in the drawer. Didn't matter how short or sloppy. I kept them all. Lorna laughed at me once for organizing them by month. I told her it wasn't for show. It was my ledger, proof that legacy didn't have to come from bloodlines or bank accounts. The Reeve name didn't sit on any corporate board anymore. It wasn't tied to hedge funds or fake charities or glossy newsletters. We weren't in the business registry, and I didn't care if we ever were again. But around here, around Burke County, it meant something else now. It meant a second chance. A kid who'd flunked out of high school but now ran diagnostics on electric forklifts? That was Reeve Center, a single mom's son who used to get picked up for tagging walls, now building cabinets for union pay. That was Reeve Center. And me, still up most nights filling out grant forms and budgeting for another row of laptops, we were all building the same thing. Something that couldn't be inherited or stolen or rigged. I closed the drawer and leaned back in my chair. The room was quiet except for the hum of the old heater kicking on. Maybe no one would ever write a book about what I did here. Fine. The people who mattered knew the truth. And that was enough. Snow tapped softly on the windows as I made my way down the hall, the floorboards creaking under my boots. The place was quiet. End of day quiet, not empty. Lights were still on in the West Wing, where the last welding class had wrapped just an hour ago. You could still smell burnt metal in the air. I stepped into the old study, now my office. Same high windows, same heavy door, but the shelves held textbooks and shop manuals instead of finance ledgers. I dropped my keys on the desk and rolled open the blueprints spread across the table. The new wing was taking shape. Welding lab on the lower level, housing for 8 apprentices above it, shared kitchen, showers, the basics. Nothing fancy, just enough to give a kid who had nowhere else to go a bed and a door that locked. That was enough. I heard faint voices and headed toward the common room. 10, maybe 12 teens gathered around the projector wall, watching YouTube tutorials on Python and JavaScript. A few took notes. One kid sat cross-legged with a busted laptop in his lap, half the keys missing, still tapping like he knew exactly what he was doing. No one noticed me standing in the doorway. That was the best part. The air was warm, not just from the radiators, but from the rhythm of it, this pulse of motion and energy that never came from money or inheritance. It came from purpose. These kids weren't waiting for handouts. They were figuring things out, one line of code, one stripped bolt at a time. On my way out, I passed the old mantle. Most of the stuff that used to sit there was gone, boxed up long ago. But one photo stayed. Aunt Ruth, sitting in her garden, wide-brimmed hat on, coffee mug in hand, looking straight at the camera like she knew what was coming. I stopped and whispered, "Still in the family, just the right part of it." One by one, I turned out the lights as I headed back upstairs. Hallway, lounge, stairwell. The house dimmed slowly, like it was settling in for the night, not shutting down. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel heavy, just full. Outside, the snow kept falling steady. No storm, no wind. Just a slow drift across the old gravel driveway, erasing every tire track, smoothing over the past. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I just felt like, for the first time, I'd built something worth leaving behind.